Welcome to my channel, KetoMealsAndRecipes.com. Today I will be making my version of a Carnivore Butter Mochi, which by the way is sugar-free, and I adapted this recipe from a popular Hawaiian Butter Mochi recipe that was actually made by a resident of Hawaii. And I hope my carnivore adaptation comes close to the taste. If you make this recipe and have had real Hawaiian mochi, please let me know what you think. Your feedback would be very much appreciated. I just made this recipe last weekend and I'm really excited about posting it right away for several reasons. First, I would like to thank one of my long-term subscribers, Della Dearest. Thank you, Della, for all of your support over the years, and especially for suggesting that I should try to convert this recipe into a carnivore version. I also want to clarify that my version of carnivore is not a lion diet. However, as I make this video, I will tell you which ingredients you can leave out if you are following a more restrictive or pure carnivore lifestyle. By the way, if you're wondering what this recipe tastes like, let me tell you. First of all, it's very buttery. It has a light coconutty flavor and is just mildly sweet. In fact, I used about half of the sweetener as required in the original recipes that used a lot of sugar. Also, this recipe has a wonderful creamy texture, just like the original, and it actually melts in your mouth. It's so creamy. This recipe is a cross between a very light cake and an actual Japanese mochi. A really unique recipe, so I hope you try it. For your information, the macronutrient ratio for these carnivore butter mochi is 2.8 to 1, with 0.8 grams of total carbs and net carbs because there's no fiber. And this recipe also has 9.6 grams of protein per delicious slice. Now let's get started. The very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sprinkle the gelatin into my 1/4 cup of slightly cool tap water. Stir until the gelatin is completely dissolved and set aside for at least 15 minutes or until you're ready to use it. I will also suggest that you line a square pan with parchment paper. My pan is an 8 by 8 inch or 21 by 21 centimeter cake pan, but you could also use a casserole pan if you don't have this size of a pan. After lining with parchment, grease the surface of the parchment and set this aside. If you're wondering why I'm greasing the parchment, it's because after I bake the mochi, the cake will come out much more easily and smoothly. Prior to filming this part, I melted my unsalted butter and let it get to room temperature. Now to a large mixing bowl, pour in the room temperature heavy whipping cream. Add your eggs. My next step is to get a measuring cup and in it pour in 1 cup of water and drop in my coconut extract. Then stir well to combine and set it aside for just a second. Then get your hand mixer and whisk at medium-low speed until everything is well combined and the mixture is a smooth, pale yellow color. Now pour in the coconut water mixture and whisk at medium-low speed until everything is well combined. You'll notice that the egg mixture has become pale yellow. At this point, I'm going to pour in my room temperature melted butter and whisk again so that everything combines perfectly. I'm placing a fine mesh sieve over the mixing bowl, then drop in your finely ground sweetener. This is the ingredient you can omit if you're on a strict carnivore diet. Then add the whey protein isolate powder, either plain or vanilla, and also your egg protein powder. But when you're choosing your protein powder, make sure that it's unsweetened protein powder. Drop in your finely ground salt. I'm combining these ingredients because they're a substitute for sweet glutinous rice flour. Then sift 1/3 at a time into the bowl and whisk into the batter until well combined. Then repeat a second and third time. After adding these ingredients, whisk at low speed and very slowly. And the reason is you don't want to create bubbles in your batter. And then continue whisking for 5 minutes because you want the batter to be completely lump-free and very, very smooth. At this point, I'm going to melt my bloom gelatin and let it cool to room temperature. Because I don't want the gelatin to clump, I'm going to slowly drizzle the liquid gelatin into the batter while I continuously whisk at low speed. And that's all there is to making this butter mochi cake batter. As you see, it's very liquidy, and that's how it should be. I forgot to mention, I preheated my oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, or approximately 175 to 177 degrees Celsius. Now that my batter is smooth and velvety and completely lump-free, I'm going to pour this butter mochi batter through a sieve and into the prepared casserole or cake pan. And the reason I'm pouring it through a sieve is because I want to make sure there are no air bubbles, and also that it's as smooth and velvety as I can possibly make it, because that's an important part of the texture of these butter mochi. I'm also going to drop the pan onto my counter a few times just to make sure that I've removed all of the air bubbles. And because I really want this to turn out perfectly, I'm going to run a toothpick, or you can use a skewer, and run it zigzag through the batter. I'm going to do a little bit of a hybrid that is not required in the original recipes. I'm going to place my cake pan into a bigger casserole pan, and to that I added boiling water so that while it's baking, the air in the oven is staying nice and smooth, and by doing this you'll find that your cake won't flop in the center. I did not show this in the video, but I did actually place a sheet of aluminum, which I made into a very loose fitting tent, on top of the mochi, and then I baked it for 15 to 20 minutes, but stayed nearby and keep an eye on it so it doesn't burn. The reason it varies, it'll depend on the pan you use and the oven you're using. And in this recipe, I'm actually using my Breville air fryer multi-purpose little oven. So for this oven, it only took 10 minutes. Once your cake is done, take everything out of the oven, remove the pan from the water bath, and let it rest for about 10 minutes. Then put your serving plate on top of the cake pan and flip, at which point you also peel off the parchment paper. Because we've pre-greased the parchment paper, you'll notice that it comes out very, very easily. For the size of the cake I made, I like to slice it into 4 rows one way, turn it around 90 degrees, and then cut it into 4 more equal-sized rows to make 16 squares. I'm really pleased with this recipe. Not only does it smell like heaven, I think it actually has a similar taste, and as far as I can tell, it has the right amount of softness and chewiness as do the original recipes that I watched. I hope you will enjoy this recipe. So I look forward to you trying this recipe and letting me know how close this is to the original. I'd really appreciate the feedback. What I have realized is that these mochi are best fresh within the first couple days. However, you can store these butter mochi in an airtight container in your refrigerator for about 4 to 5 days. It was really rubbery and not that good, so I don't recommend that. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch my video, and I hope that this tasty recipe for a carnivore butter mochi is something that you can make and enjoy. For all of you who have watched to the end, I really appreciate your support. And if you could do one more thing, please share the link with someone that you think might also enjoy my videos. I hope you come back when I post my next video, and until next time, have a very happy and healthy day. Cheers!